Hey guys, it's Steve for CollectorMania here continuing our 32 series with Animar Soul of Elements. This is, as you may read in the tapped out description, this is one of my near and dear decks to my heart. It's one of the first ones that I actually really broke out with in as far as competitive-ish play. It's won me many games, and because of that I've had to tone it down several times just because, once again, people in my playgroup started hating it. And I didn't want that. I wanted to continue playing it. So right now, the build is actually featured entirely creatures and lands. There are no other spell types, permanent types in the deck. So that makes it a little bit unique to me. It's a lot of fun. I definitely enjoy playing it. So anyway, let's break into it here. We've got Animar Soul of Elements. He is Temur colored. I know I wanted to say rug, but those are the old days catching up with me. So anyway, he costs a blue, a red, and a green. Legendary creature, of course, elemental, 1/1. Protection from white and black, which is huge, really big. It comes in more than you'd think it would. And then whenever you cast a creature spell, put a +1/+1 counter on Animar Soul of Elements. So really good there. He gets huge really fast. The other side of his ability is, for those +1/+1 counters on him, your creature spells cost that much colorless less. So you can see how that can just be crazy broken. People have been utilizing this commander forever. He's been around for a really long time. He's probably the best, I don't know, rug commander in my opinion, just because he's so crazy. As long as you're going creature based, I think the other guy might be a little bit better on like spells. What is his name?
Riku.
Riku, there we go. So anyway, let's break into the deck here. Obviously, it's a little bit different, once again, than our normal breakdown. All we're going to have is a giant list of creatures and then a few lands, so get ready for that. So anyway, first up, as far as our creatures, we've got a Flamekin Harbinger. It is a elemental shaman, 1/1 for 1. When Flamekin Harbinger enters the battlefield, you may search your library for an elemental card. Reveal it, then shuffle your library and put that card on top of it. So, a really good tutor for creatures. You're mainly looking for Maelstrom Wanderer with this guy. Maelstrom Wanderer is almost like the second commander in the deck. There are a few other key elementals that you can find with this, and like Green Warden of Marasa, stuff like that. So anyway, just a really linchpin key card. This deck probably runs more like tutoring effects than any of my other decks, just because there is a specific way that you want to win most of the time. So anyway, there is that. On from that, we've got some Animar tech, and that's in Shrieking Drake. This guy is really good for either bouncing himself back and then continuing to play him just to get Animar bigger, or bouncing a creature back that you want the ETB effect on again. So it's kind of a multi-purpose card. Usually early game, I'll just use him to buff up Animar, especially if I have like multiple islands, stuff like that. So anyway, just an interesting little tech card for the Animar build. And then we've got a really big one in Bloom Tender. This card is ridiculous. You want to play this turn 2. There aren't a whole lot of creatures in the deck that you want to play before Animar, but this guy you want to get out as soon as you can. So if you think about it, you lay down your third land, you cast Animar with your lands, and then all of a sudden this guy taps for 3, which means that you can now play another creature, buffing up Animar. It's really good to kind of get into those chains where you're just playing creatures, making Animar huge, drawing cards. And as you'll see through the deck, we have a lot of card draw, a lot of mana production. Birds of Paradise is something that I kind of want to talk about too for a second, even though it's not a feature card. Having that guy out turn 1, super important. Any of your turn 1 mana dorks. From that, we go on to Phantasmal Image. This is kind of like, I didn't think it was that important in the beginning, but the more I've played with it, oh my gosh, like, it is ridiculous the things that you can copy. Like, I've copied so many. I've even copied a Craterhoof. Like, it's just like, oh, so good, so good. So, Phantasmal Image. Of course, it has the drawback of if it gets targeted, you have to sacrifice it, but whatever. You're only really using it for the ETB effects most of the time anyway. So, there's that one. And then we've got a little bit of protection with Spellskite. This card is another key card, I would say. The main thing with Animar is that people are going to try and remove him as soon as they see him, because they know what he does for the most part at this point. You sometimes get that odd game where you play against new players and they don't know about it, and then all of a sudden you just wreck face, but most of the time you're going to play against seasoned people, and yeah, Animar. So anyway, just being able to cast him, especially with Animar's cost reduction, and then just being able to pay life to protect Animar over and over again, it's really effective. So, because most of the time you're going to be tapped out on your turn anyway, so you're going to play as many creatures as you can. Past that, we've got a little bit of recursion. Eternal Witness, of course, you need to recur things, mostly big creatures, or I've definitely hit fetch lands with this before. For some reason, this deck has a really really bad habit of leaving me land screwed, and I'm not really sure why. It's got the highest land count of all of my decks. I mean, I think it's got like 39 lands or something crazy like that, whereas most of the time I'm running like 36. So don't know what's going on there. Maybe it's just because every time I shuffle it, there's just a giant block of creatures. I don't know. But anyway, Eternal Witness, really, really good, of course, in any deck. Shaman of the Forgotten Ways. This is not only a mana ramp card, but a win condition. If you can control the board for long enough and get a giant host of creatures and then just have a crazy opportunity to pay the 10 mana for the Formidable, I think it's 10, yeah, 11 mana actually, yeah, and pay that Formidable cost and then just reduce everybody's life total to, you know, the amount of creatures that they have. Usually you're going to have a ton and they're not going to have as many as you, so then you can just start knocking people out with Animar left and right. So there's that. Kind of a jerky way to win, but it definitely works. Past that, we've got Dax Duplicant. This is probably one of my favorite clone effects in this deck, mainly because it gives it haste. The Dethrone has come in before, but it's not that important. The main thing, once again, is the haste. It's in a really good color group, too, I guess, because a lot of the really good clone effects cost 2 blue, whereas this one's a red and a blue, so it makes it a little easier for Animar to cast it. So that's Dax Duplicant. And then another really big part about this, since you have no spells, you know, instants or sorceries, anything like that, I guess everything's a spell. I don't know why I keep saying that. Glenelendra and other types of counter effects are really important for this, just because you can kind of protect yourself from that Cyclonic Rift, or, I mean, there's a million other effects, like sometimes like the Wrath of God, stuff like that, that'll really just knock you back into the Stone Age, because, once again, if a board wipe happens and you're playing Animar, you are starting over. There's not really a whole lot of, you know, you can't catch up as quick as a lot of other decks do. It's kind of glass cannon-ish, I'd say. So anyway, Glenelendra, you know, pay 1 blue, sacrifice it, has persist, comes back. You can, again, pay another blue, sacrifice it. Also really good because it only costs 1 blue to cast. So 3 colorless, 1 blue. Usually you're just casting it for that 1 island, so not bad at all. 2/2 flyers are also always good. Just block something that you need to. We've got Pophoros, God of the Forge. Obviously, you know what this does. Really, really good in this deck. One of the main win cons is actually a combo between this and Palancron. You just destroy the table. And that, I would say that is actually how this deck wins more games than not. It's really funny, when I first started building it, it was more combat damage oriented, but then it started to become a little bit more combo, a little, you know, shifted that way, which is not always the way I like to play, but with this deck, I just accept it, the darkness into my heart there, you know, kind of thing. So anyway, there's Pophoros. And then we've got a Temur, Sabertooth. This is a newer card, a newer edition. I just put it in about, maybe, well, I say newer, but it's been about a year since I've had it in here. Lauren, who I think we did a deck discussion for with Animar, actually showed me this guy, and it made a lot of sense once I actually read the card. Just being able to return creatures to your hand and then play them again, it's super effective, especially if you got like a Peregrine Drake. I mean, that's infinite mana right there, you know. So really, really good. Really cool card. Really one of those cards that's really like shifted towards Animar, like deck techie wise. So kind of like one of those just really good creatures that you want to have. Then we have another counter protection spell, and that's Vincer. I have used this to save myself from Supreme Verdicts and stuff like that. It definitely has come in really handy, because usually when somebody's going to board wipe me and I know that I can win the next turn, I just want to stabilize and just, you know, wreck face, you know, just being able to bounce back that uncounterable board wipe or anything that's going to mess you up. Just really effective, especially when you have like things that can bounce this back to your hand and you can just continue doing it. There have been a few games where I've actually just continued to bounce Venser and then return everybody's lands, so it's pretty bad. It's pretty dark. And then we've got Vizier of the Menagerie, a new card from I think it was it the first one? It was Amonkhet, yeah, that's right. I keep thinking it's from Hour of Devastation, but it's not. Really stupid good. This is Oracle Maldia for creatures, basically, but better in a lot of ways, because you don't even have to reveal the creature, so they don't even know what you're getting to your hand. Oh, it's just so good. Oh, well, I guess they know it because you're playing it, but they don't know what you're looking at. Just an amazing card. I've ripped so many stupid things off the top of this. I think my most notable one was like a Kozilek Butcher of Truth, just revealing it. You know, oh yeah, it was so good. It was just so good, especially with Animar's effect and this effect. Just yeah. Especially if you get this guy and Oracle at the same time, then I guess you lose that secrecy, but then you just keep, you know, land, creature, you know, it's so good, so good. I know you'll see me get overly excited for a few of these cards, but once again, I love this deck, so... And then we've got another new addition in Deep Glow Skate. I think this came out in the last Commander product. Really, really effective for just like doubling all of your commander's counters. Just hit it, and then just all of a sudden your Animar is now a 40/40. It's insane. Really cool card. Once again, another card that's almost tailored to this deck. I know it works in like Viral and, you know, stuff like that, but really, really good for this deck. And then we got another creature counter in Draining Welk. This is actually probably my favorite one to have. It's a little harder to cast than the other two, just because, well, not really, but, you know, you're getting that cost reduction. But sometimes, you know, 6 mana can be a little bit to ask for, especially early in the game, even with Animar. But the times that it really works, man, it really works. I mean, I've countered stupid things, you know, like 10 cost things, like Omniscience with this, and just had a giant flying monster that's just destroying everybody's face. So, Draining Welk. Really, really cool card. Then we're going to get into kind of the secondary theme of the deck, which is Cascade. It's really, really important to, like, I think I have pretty much all the ones that are in this color pair for Cascade. Like, I have the Shardless Agent, I have the, what is the elf? Why can't I think of it? Bloodbraid, there we go. I have the Maelstrom Wanderer, but Ethereum Horn Sorcerer is one of the ones I really wanted to feature because it can return it to your hand. So it kind of sets up its own card advantage because you can continue to return it to your hand at the end of somebody's turn, you know, before it gets to your turn, and then just continue to play it and cascade into more and more of your creatures. Since it is casting them, the NMR does trigger off of it, so it just works even better. My favorite thing to do is to cascade into cascade to cascade. I mean, you can't set it up and it just happens at random, but I definitely have had, I think, the whole chain before it happens. So, especially when you start with Maelstrom Wanderer and just go down the line. It's really, really fun, and it's really ridiculous when it happens because your opponents are just like, the hell, man? You know, like, what are you doing? The other part that I really like about Cascade is because it's a little bit harder to interact with. Not a lot of people understand, like, well, not a lot of people do, but newer players especially have a hard time interacting with it because they try and counter like the Maelstrom Wanderer or the Ethereum Horn Sorcerer when sometimes they should really just be holding onto that counter waiting to see what happens, you know, kind of thing, which is, it's just a weird interaction. It's a lot of fun to watch. So especially newer players, when you get their gears turning, you're just like, this is how this works. So fun teaching moments there. Then we've got Soul of the Harvest. As I was talking about before, it's really important to set up your chain. Soul of the Harvest is one of those really crucial cards to get that going, because each time you cast a creature spell, you draw a card. There you go. I mean, that sets it up perfectly for you. That way you can just continue. There are a ton of colorless creature spells in this deck, so if you hit like a big string of those and just continue to cast things for free, leaving your lands untapped for when you really need to cast creature spells, yeah, it's really good. Especially when you hit Palinchron with this again. I know there's a million combos with Palinchron, but this is one of the most effective ones. You draw your deck and you just win. So you just go until you find your Popharos, and then you just destroy everyone. So there's that. And speaking of Palinchron, this to me is one of the most degenerate flying monsters there ever has existed. It combos with itself, you know, that's all you really need to say. It is super effective in a deck like this because of the cost reduction. I mean, you're casting it for 2, returning it for 4, casting it for 2. You're gaining whatever color of mana you want. It is infinite mana right off the bat. As long as you have 4 islands, that's the one crucial part you need to make sure you have. But most of the time you're gonna, because I think this deck is actually mainly, it's heavy islands, heavy forest, and then kind of light mountain. But yeah, anyway, Palinchron, really good. Your opponent, or your friends and your opponents will hate you, but whatever. Then we've got Worldbreaker. This guy is super important because it's on the cast instead of ETB. So there are a ton of things that will just shut you down. Like Topor Orb is the one that always comes to my mind. Like that will just roll you over. So you need to have effects like this that get around that needing to be ETB effect. So this is one of them. This is probably the lesser effective one, just because the Ulamog is definitely the better one. But Eldrazi are one of my favorite creature types now, and this guy is just really good. Plus he has a way to return himself to your hand. There are a few colorless lands in here, so it can work. Actually, yeah, there's some pain lands, stuff like that. So, and then we've got Archetype of Endurance. A little bit more protection. This guy will ruin everybody's day when he comes out. He's one of the creatures that I tutor for most of the time, just because making Animar hexproof, even though he's already got the protection from black and white, which is really, really important, there are ways to bounce him and get rid of him with blue, and there are ways to kill him with red, you know, so on and so forth. Fight him with green or something like that, which would be, I don't know if that would ever actually work, just because of how big it gets. So anyway, giving your entire team hexproof is great. Taking away hexproof from everybody else is also, you know, that's just icing on the cake there, you know. There's not like targeted removal in here really, but you know, for the most part, just really effective. And then we got one of our other main win cons in Craterhoof. Like I said, when I first built the deck, it was more combat oriented. It's shifted away from that, but you can still get a win with Craterhoof very easily, especially some of the board states that I've had. I mean, I've had 20, 30 creatures out at a time, you know, and you know, giving this guy the ability that he has, I don't know what Wizards was thinking sometimes. It's just, especially when you like put him in like Elves decks, but I mean, oh gosh. The cost reduction with Animar with this guy, casting him for 3 green is just stupid. Like, that's just stupid. Because all of a sudden all your creatures are now 40/40s and you're just destroying the table. So, and I guess going along with that, whatever boost Animar gets, he's usually killing somebody. All he needs to get is to 21, and it's really easy for him to get there. So there is that as well. And then we've got, once again, our secondary commander, Maelstrom Wanderer. This guy is 100% the creature that I go and look for most of the time. I know I was just talking about how I search for like other archetype and whatever. This guy is probably the first one that I look for, especially with, he's the whole reason that that first elemental is in here. Like, he comes down, finds you 2 creatures, gives everything haste. It's just stupid good. Just stupid good. Yeah, Maelstrom Wanderer. What else can be said? I mean, there's decks built around this guy, and they're just ridiculous. So I recommend playing him, even if you don't have, I guess I'll put it this way. If you don't have a Temur deck, I would probably build this guy. If you really want to build a degenerate deck, I'd build Animar. So there we go. There's that. And getting into our colorless kind of creatures, we've got Kozilek, Butcher of Truth. Obviously, there's a few Eldrazi in here. This is one of the ones I wanted to highlight. He's the older version of Kozilek, so he doesn't have the counter ability, which kind of But the newer version of Kozilek is a little harder to play in this deck just because of the colorless requirement. So a little bit tough there. Because Animar does not negate that for you. You have to pay those 2 diamond manas in order to get that Kozilek out. So anyway, this Kozilek, super effective. Usually you're casting him for little to none, like 1 or 0, you know, just free from your hand. Drawing 4 cards. If you have a Maelstrom Wanderer out, he's got haste now, Annihilator 4 coming at somebody. He's just a monster once again. Kozilek, just good. And then Ulamog, the Ceaseless Hunger. We talked about like ETB effects. This guy's on cast. He also has a pretty backbreaking effect where he'll exile the top 20 cards of your opponent's library. Once again, with Maelstrom Wanderer, giving this guy haste, having a ginormous threat that's indestructible on the board right away, really quick, you know, for essentially 0 mana is pretty stupid. So, Ulamog, Ceaseless Hunger. So I believe that's the end of the creatures there. I know that was a lot to take in, and there are even more in the deck, so I definitely recommend checking out the Tapped Out. There's a lot of nuances in this deck. There's a lot of just little stupid, crazy combinations that you can do. So I highly recommend it, especially if you're trying to build this thing. So anyway, I wanted to feature, you know, 3 lands essentially. First up is the Ancient Ziggurat. I haven't really found another place where I find this effective besides this deck, just because it's so restrictive on being able to cast. You have to cast creature spells with this, otherwise it doesn't tap for mana, so you can't even activate abilities with it. So in this type of deck, obviously it works great. In other types of decks, it's really not that good. So anyway, just want to throw that out there. There are a few other ones, like I think Sliver decks play this card as well, you know, stuff like that. On from that, we've got Opal Palace. This is probably one of the most important lands in your deck, to be honest. It's kind of odd. This helps you reset up. If Animar has died 2 times, he will come back in with, I believe, 3 counters. So that's super effective for you because it helps you kind of get back into the game. Like I said, a board wipe devastates you. You do not want that to happen. That's part of the reason there's so many counter spells in here, counter creatures. So Opal Palace is super important. I wish there was a way to find it a little bit better, especially when I'm just playing the creature version, so there's not really a whole lot of like land search, I guess. But anyway, really cool land. And then on from that, we've got our fetch land cycle. I'm running all but one, I believe, and that's the Marsh Flats, just because I can't run that one, because I don't have any swamps and or plains in here. So getting the right colors in this deck is super important. Obviously, with your commander costing, you know, a blue, a red, and a green, you need those colors to be right on turn 3, and you want that consistency. So I recommend having all of them. I know that's not always, you know, feasible, you know, price-wise, but when you can, I would do it. So anyway, that is pretty much Animar. I hope you guys have enjoyed this. I know, like I said, I've been gushing over it the entire time. I've been so excited to do this deck tech, and it's taken so long to get here, it feels like. But we're here finally, and yeah, we're into our enemy shards, and I couldn't be happier. So anyway, we'll see you guys next time. Thanks.